It's a book of permissions to live abundantly how you define it without shame or judgment, and be able to say, yes, you have to do more until you get your more than enough. People are like, oh, well, there's enough. Okay, well, what are you going to do before that, right? Couldn't imagine at 21 or 18, even though I was a whole soul at that time, if I didn't have a kid or two, moving from one city to another, choosing matrimony, all of that all at once, and then continually doing that through your 20s as you are trying to also learn your individual selves, and you have spouse and children look, that's fascinating. Somebody will tell you, oh yeah, I like experiences and time with my family, right? As they have some sort of superior value system and they understand money a little bit more. I'm like, well, how much that truck cost?
Welcome to The Intentional Investor with Matt Zeigler, where he and his guests explore the intersection of investing and life, portfolio, and purpose. Nothing in this podcast is investment advice. Nothing in this podcast is advising you to buy or sell any security or to do anything with your money. Seriously, you should only act on investment advice from someone you know and who knows your unique situation. We are not that person. Matt Zeigler is a managing director at Sunpoint Investments, and the opinions expressed on this show do not necessarily reflect the opinions of Sunpoint Investments or of Second Foundation Partners. Securities discussed in the podcast may be holdings of Sunpoint Investments.
You're watching The Intentional Investor right here on Epsilon Theory YouTube. I'm your host, Matt Zeigler. My guest, we're going to see if I can get through this. I got a doozy of an intro for this one. He's a wonder, and I am not talking about a Vicky. He's not a small wonder, more of a Stevie, an all-seeing yet non-site required wonder. He's a CEO, he's a founder, he's a PhD. He's got all the outward and forward visions covered, and that's because he's also a planner. He's also a therapist. I know he's got all these backward and inner visions covered too. And how can I describe this new book he's got, which I absolutely love? You're going to want to go get in a copy. I'm going to start to say he describes how love's in need of more love today than ever. How talking not just to God, but to the people who know about how to roll and adapt, etc., how that matters, because I have to think that's how you survive the village of Houston land. And along the way, you pick up a few contusions, especially if you're an AGG, like an OG, but all grace and attitude, all those G's are so important. And you got to look back. You got to salute the Duke, call in the classics, call in your classics. And I was really waiting for like some UGK references or something to show up on this. But if all you do is wish, my sweet, sweet little skilos out there, you might forget to dream, or worse, you might forget to act, and inaction will knock you off of your feet. And nothing's coolio about getting stuck in that foggy pastime paradise. No Texas upbringing is ever all soft summer all the time. The ordinary pains will still find you. They will still hurt. And as lovely as the outcomes can turn out, like when flourish around and write a whole segment on the 6A method, or as I have now come to call them, the triple double A's, which is up there with the 5 Ps and all the fantastic naming conventions you have. You don't lose the poetry of capturing the joy inside yours, mine, our tears, a full rainbow of humanity inside this man. This guest's writing might as well be singing because it's magic. Just like the book, as it should be, coming down from some distant other star and so close to home. Founder and CEO of Concurrent Wealth Management, wealth advisor and well-being advisor, and most importantly, author of the just-released Wealth in the Key of Life. I hope you like that intro. It's Dr. Preston Cherry.
Oh, man, yes. Glove clap for sure. I heard a whole 3 Stevie albums in there for sure. And love the UGK line coming from H-Town, right? So that's fantastic. Well, thank you for having me, Matt.
I'm so happy you're here. We're going to talk about, who knows what, I want to start with this. I see the records on the wall. I know you have this story and I've never heard you tell it. I want to take me back to when you and a kid, you and little Jen run around the house. What did Charles and Carla have? What was the audio setup? What was the situation?
Yeah. So first of all, shout out to my sister Jen because that's the first time that somebody's called her by her double name, I think, on a podcast besides myself. So that's pretty good. I had this, my dad had that record collection when I was little. And I didn't listen to lullabies when I was a child. Now I have a 7-month-old and his name is Laith, and me and my wife, and he listened to lullabies, YouTube. Well, I went to sleep on 70s R&B. I mean, very white OJ's right here from the family reunion. Oh my goodness. Stairway to Heaven, OJ's, right? It's Lou Rawls, okay? This is what I was listening to. The Whispers. These are the things that I was listening to. Stevie Wonder, as the book is the name after Songs of Key Life. These are the albums that are dear to me. And there's pictures of me next to these albums when I was little. And I had a teddy bear as well. I also had a teddy bear. Now, fast forward to many years of asking my dad for this record collection. Dad, can I have a record collection? And he was like, no, you're not having it. And I graduated my master's degree in financial planning in 2006. So my dad he's old school, so he still calls cigarette squares, right? He said, come on out. Come on out here, young blood. I'm going to come have a square with you, right? And it was cold. Went out there. He said, man, I left something in my trunk. Can you open your trunk for me? And so I opened the trunk, Matt, and the record collection was in the trunk. I lost it.
How bad did you cry when you saw that trunk?
It was automatic. I was just shocked. And they were in these blue crates, milk crates. And it has since dwindled over the years, but it was still large. And I was speechless because he got me. He really got me. And I've been adding on to the record collection since 2006 with my own records. I'm about to buy the Sade, the 5-disc set. Oh my goodness, it's going to be awesome. I'm adding some Maxwell. I've got the Highwaymen. You know, I got you right there. Yeah. And so that's the story. And I love records. He had a Technics, I think it is, a record player. He also had a Kenwood.
Techniques. It's okay. Techniques.
Yeah. Techniques. And then it was a Kenwood when I was coming up.
Shoot.
Around and when we moved out to the suburbs. So anyway, I can go on and on. And what I do is I switch these albums out, you know, pretty much every week. I keep the songs, the key of life there just cause, but music is so important to me. I feel it. I think it's universal. It's like math and language, because language goes back to hieroglyphics, right? And when you emotion when you speak, so it's all forms of communication. And so it touches the human condition, and music is that important to me to where I feel it every day. And I think everyone else on the planet feels music the way they feel it.
When you're a kid and that record collection's there, and I love the nighttime soundtrack. I think that's fantastic. I think more kids should be raised on Sly and the Family Stone, as I was too. It's like these memories just seeping into your brain all the time. Were you allowed to touch the record player in the record collection?
Good one.
Was that a rite of passage? When did that happen?
So when I was little, I heard stories to where I was trying to play with the knobs, and my mom and dad tell me the stories that, you know, this was back when it was still going on in my house, but not as prevalent as you. But it was a little discipline, right? You know, so the hands were smacked a little bit, right? And so yes, I was playing with the dials, and I did get my little hands smacked a little bit. That said, my dad and I was a record producer way before, like, you know, with the Neptunes or something like that, right? Or rest his soul, Quincy Jones. I was a producer, because what we did is we made cassette tapes, and we'd take all of the records out, and then it transferred to CDs, and we would make an album, all right, on a cassette with individual songs coming from different artists. And we would line up, my dad and I would make the pause button on the double cassette. So you had to hit the pause button so cleanly so it didn't go after the song, right? It had to end the song and then go right into the next one. And so I still have some of these cassettes in my car right now. Because my car actually has it has a CD and a Bluetooth and a tape player. These are 40 years, I'll be 46 again. 45 years of tapes, Matt. So the long story long, when I was a newborn, yes, hand smacks. But throughout my young memories, we were making music. So I got to touch all the equipment.
This is fantastic, because the rite of passage on being trusted with the precious record collection, it's a big deal. It's a big deal. Now, what about first record? What's first record that's yours? Like, you own it. This is
Oh yeah, yeah. Okay, so when I was 17, I think it was. No, so was it 17? No. This was 13 or 14. I
Okay.
had my first slow dance that, wasn't when my mom, because when your mom or your sister,
It's different.
you're just dancing like this, like a little robot. That's not a slow jam,
Right.
right?
Right.
All right, it's like a Christmas holiday song or something like
Right.
that. But my official slow dance with someone that was older than me, I was 13, and I think he was 18 or 19 because I went to a party with my aunt because we used to go back. I was born in Houston. We used to go back to Kansas City to hang out with my cousins all the time, right? And so that was an adult party, Matt, back in the day. You know what I mean? I was
Yeah.
13 and 18, 19. People was grown.
Right.
Right. So this is why I love Janet Jackson, and the first album that you asked me about is Keith Sweat. All right, Make It Last Forever. And I've seen Keith Sweat in concerts. I've seen all this. I've seen Janet 3 times. Is because the first song I had a slow dance to was "Right and Wrong Way" by Keith Sweat. There's a right and a wrong way to love somebody. And so I was dancing with this teenage woman, right? I had a mouthful of Skittles, uh, some cheese Doritos, and a Puma outfit that was probably too big because I was a little chunky. And I was dancing with this pretty woman to Right and Wrong Way. So my first album was Right and Wrong Way.
That is phenomenal.
Bam,
And
look at that.
so what era are Janet? We're post Rhythm Nation? Are we pre like
Yeah, so my first song that right after that was Let's Wait a While. Let's wait a while before anything late. Right. So that was on the Control album. Right.
because Control's all time.
Yeah.
Can't forget it.
And then the Rhythm Nation was one of my first concerts. So
That's awesome.
she actually pointed to me because when she brought the Black Cat out, Black Cat, da, 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 da. And when she brought it, I was hanging over the rail, Matt, and she pointed to me. Well, I thought, because you put the spotlight right in our section. She goes, "How you doing up there?" And I was like, "Thank you, Janet. You're talking to me. Yeah, I appreciate it."
I think we might have gone back and forth on social media about this. And funny enough, Janet Jackson ended up in all my Spotify and whatever lists because I listened to stuff in all different places. And she was like in my top 5 all the way around. I went on a big Janet revisit this year.
Yeah.
We might have gone back. It was the Rhythm Nation, the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I had to do it so you don't give the finger.
Blame you, Kev.
Learning that as a kid,
I
valuable
dropped
life
that on
skills.
stage, by the way. I just did a keynote about a month ago, and I did a Janet Jackson 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And then
I would have lost my mind. I would have spit the Skittles out, wiped off the Doritos, and come up to Keith Sweat with you.
right.
So, all right. I want to rewind back, and I want to rewind back because I think it's important. I want to talk to you about your parents. I want to talk about these two people and some of the decisions they made. I know this isn't too much. There's some of this in the book. You did 2 brilliant, wonderful, say the name of it in a second so people can go find it. There's a 2-part interview you did when you launched the podcast with your parents that I adored. Fantastic.
Yes, it's the Life Money Balance podcast, and I think it was Life Money Balance before. I think it said something. I forgot what the 2 episodes were. Oh, here's where it started.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
it's like the
there's-
second and third episode or something like
Yep.
that, right?
And
Okay.
then it's part 1, part 2.
So
In those episodes, I know you're going to ask me a question, but in those episodes, I stopped the podcast like right there, right? It was like, I didn't need like 100 episodes or anything. There's so much humanity and finances in those 2 episodes that's right there.
not just that's it, but we get the complete arc because we're meeting them now, presumably in their 60s when that one was done?
Yes.
We're meeting them in their 60s and we're hearing about. So how did they frame and how old were you? You go Kansas City to Texas and it's this whole transition, Kansas City to Houston, where like just 2 young parents figuring out jobs, figuring out who's going to work and how. How much did you live that experience? How much did they tell you the stories of that growing up?
Yeah, we grew up together. My parents and my sister and I, we grew up together. It's fascinating that at 21 and 18, okay, that they were making lifelong decisions that they may not have had uh, they had the wherewithal to make, Matt, but from where they came from, surely didn't have the tools, but they seen them, fortunately, thankfully, and blessedly came up with, because what the decisions that they were making at that time, they were getting to know themselves. Hell, I'm 40 some odd year, 46 years old. I I had the privilege. I had the privilege to keep on exploring oneself, and going back at that apple a couple of times, to be honest with you,
Mhm.
right? Um, I couldn't imagine at 21 or 18, even though I was a whole soul at that time, if I didn't have a kid or two, moving from one city to another, uh, choosing matrimony, uh, all of that all at once, and then continually doing that through your 20s as you are trying to also learn your individual selves, and you have spouse and children look, that's fascinating. It really is. And when I hear folks talk about their parents and they say, well, yeah, I don't want to be like my parents. I don't want to do what they did. I want to retire early. They worked for, the man, or the system is this or that, and I'm talking all demographics here, right? These are common phrases. I don't want to work as hard as they did. Well, how the hell do you think you got here? You know, it's a disrespect to say those things. Yeah, you have the privilege and the duty. They wanted you to have that opportunity, so that's why you're here, right? And so, like for instance, my dad, he has workman's feet, all right, because he worked blue collar at airlines and in power plant, okay, all right, and it shows today. Now, when I take my shoes off in the pedicure place, they're like, "Man, you got women's feet," right? Because I didn't do no damn blue collar work, right? But that's the price. Okay. That's the price. And I'm forever grateful of him and my mother, who sacrificed, uh, you know, uh, some parts of her life to take care of us. And there's a reason why, and there's a long list of why there's, doctor this, and, why I'm speaking with you, and the like. Now, it does conclude hard work. It does. But I almost, I know I do. I almost want to throw up every time I say, all you got to do is hard work. No, everybody working hard. Postman working hard. Right. Anyway, that's a rant.
How much of this are you aware of, like as a kid of young parents? So first off, do you remember the move? Do you remember loading up the car and driving from Kansas City, Houston? Is
I,
that
I
a conscious?
remember, yes, I do actually. It's one of my first memories. So I was trying to look off the space to recall, because my dad had I think it was like a 76 Cadillac. It was very long. You think, dude, that was long, long.
It's a living room
Right.
and a trunk. Yeah.
Right, right. And I remember because it used to rust on the window a little bit. You had to use paint in order to paint over the rust a little bit. And I do remember being in that car, because we used to go pick up my dad from work during that time too. So I remember that move from Kansas City to the apartment, and then that was in '83, and then we moved to the suburbs in '86.
What do you remember about moving from the apartment to the suburbs? Do you have any like core memories about just what was going on in the house and how it felt?
Yes, it was. I didn't know what the sacrifices were being made, and why we were going to the suburbs. And actually the apartment was in a great place, part of town as well. You know, so I'd like to say that my parents had the wherewithal to say we were going to put Jennifer and Preston in good school districts. Okay, and we had access. That's why and it's another way. I can lose weight if I could just listen to people just talk stuff all the time, because some things just make me want to throw up, and that's not downplaying, bulimia and anything like that. But my point about that is that, when people talk about generational wealth, okay, it's like, oh, I didn't receive an inheritance, so that means, I'm a self-made millionaire, and that's some bull. Okay, it's because there's generational transfers, like my dad and my mother did for my sister and I, okay, when they put us into, and I remember it's kindergarten on the west side of Houston, okay, in these good school districts, and then transfer us to another. All right. That's another reason why, I'm having this, why I talk about aspiration and abundant life and being able to make it through traumatic years at times. Okay. Because the foundation was laid. All right. So yes, I was transferred. There's a long list about generational wealth that I've been transferred to, right, without an inheritance.
And I got to think, so now we're going to jump back and forth on the timeline with this. You as a parent now in your 40s, congratulations, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you.
But you as a parent now, thinking about them doing this in their early 20s effectively at this point, and how they got that priority stack together. How do you think about that now? Like, they didn't have you. They didn't call up Dr. Preston Cherry and say, I need a meeting, sir. Mr. CFP, sir. Please help me flourish.
Right. Right.
How'd that happen?
Yeah. When you were doing the intro, by the way, about the flourishing, I almost went ho, 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 because I was going to slide down the chimney or something like that. But, I realized that then how I didn't know the magnitude. No, I don't think any child does. But I was aware. Because we did grow up together and we did talk. My mom talked a little bit more than my pops. My pops was in the middle, some of that. That's back in just Gen X training, so half of it was whoop ass and half of it was, having a little talk of why you got your ass beat. But, I was aware then. And, as I've grown a whole bunch, like my grandfather said to me a long time ago, he said, do you understand what I'm saying to you, son? I said, no, grandfather. He said, that's okay. Just keep living. And that's a great point, because as you live, you get to get better understanding. And now, I've realized this for a very long time, and what they done. Now, it wasn't always smooth sailing, by the way. We did have conflict, we had some world famous lines in our house, like, well, you may be right, but I pay the mortgage. Well, you really can't trump that one. There's no, what do you do with that line? You just go to your room, right? So, but for the most part, I and my sister, we're thankful, of if you take it all in aggregate, okay, these the inputs of self-worth and self-value, okay, which are two compoundable assets that I talk about all the time. Safety, conversation, just love unconditionally. I can just go on, and suffering through social ills at times. Because back when I was in elementary, people don't think about this a lot. They're like, oh yeah, social ills, particularly with Black folks, are, it was so long ago. Oh, my dad is 67. My mom is 64. All right. When they were born, they couldn't vote. All right. There was redlining and a whole bunch of other things. And in the late 80s, we were closer to the civil rights than we were to what we are now. Right. We weren't that far removed. So when we were in the suburbs, you're talking about social ills. All right. I've experienced being spit on before. All right. So when you have some sort of comfort zone, all right, through that, and actually are plugged into some sort of access, all right, it would behoove one to not take advantage of that. And I understood at a very early age of the responsibility of taking advantage. I call this 6 feet above, 2 feet on, of the day that you have, and what is the responsibility of doing with such a thing. And I'll wrap up, because I know we're gonna get into this later, but I think that's what was killing me most during my fog years that I seemingly had lost, but my mom said I didn't. It really wasn't the things that I was doing. It played a lot of self-destruction, but I was just medicating. But it was the loss of opportunity. I knew that I was way, better as a person internally and externally doing, I was at a total disconnect. But it all goes back to your original question, which is, was I aware of the inputs. If I did not have the fundamentals, okay, I would not have made it through those challenging years, period.
What's Preston like? What's the end of high school like? What's the end of high school into picking where you're going to go to college and all that stuff? What's that period like for you?
Concurrent. That one was
Sorry.
escape. No, that was escape for me. I wanted to, I had enough of where I was, even though it gave me a lot of access. I had a couple of, some friends from where I grew up. I always go back home and all that. But I needed escape. I needed to do something. So, I moved to Kansas City for a little bit to reconnect with some family. That didn't go as smoothly as I wanted it to. Because there's always the grass is greener on the other side.
Never
right?
does. Never does.
Yeah. Very, very rarely. But there is green grass over on some of the.
But you got to try it. That's part of the departure of
Yes.
being wrong. Yeah.
Yes. So I ended up, and I needed that, and I ended up coming back to Houston and going to community college and staying with my folks. And that there go because I boomeranged 3 times. All right. But I have an episode with my parents about that too. It's called Our Gen X Ruining Their Finances for Their Adult Children. And there's a clip in there. And I asked them point blank, I said, would you have ruined your finances for me anytime I moved back home? And they quickly, they didn't even look at each other, Matt. They were like, no, we ain't doing that. It was like, you're not finna live in our house and you live better than what we live. It says, as soon as
magical quote.
Magical. He's like, I was like, you ain't finna do that. Matter of fact, if that starts happening, you need to get out.
Right.
And so there was always a plan, but I appreciated that move too, because I was able to move back home. I was able to live freely as an adult. There was, household rules, but I took care of my own bills and all. I mean, everything. The only thing I did not pay was rent, but my dad is always talking about, hey, you gonna put something on it, right? It was hey, bring some food home. You gonna do this grass, I like cut the grass, not smoke grass, but I was, I don't know how I was just telling myself, but everybody did it back in the day. But anyway, you're doing chores and all that other stuff, but you had a plan.
Yeah.
And my dad and my mother said, son, as long as you have a plan, we will welcome you to our home as long as you're advancing this yourself. And so, yeah, that's the high school to college. And then I went from community college to Prairie View after that.
So talk about, well, actually, in the 3 boomerangs, or in this process, I'm actually curious. And this is, again, I'm asking you, I am very deliberately asking current tense you, present tense you, to look back at past tense you, and really to look back at past tense parents. You're a planner now. You're a person who helps orchestrate these things, even when stuff isn't going right. How did your parents approach this whole, a lot of hands off, clearly, like we're just going to put the environment here and you have to go live and grow and figure it out on your own. But how do you think about just you getting the tools you needed to work with to go, this expectation of figuring out the way forward is kind of everything.
Yeah. We always had like real conversations and still do as a family unit. One of the things that we do well as a family is communicate. Now, there's nice and harmonious, pun intended, conversations. And then there's what we call with the quotes, cussing each other out. Right. And what I call that in financial psychology is not a difficult conversation, but it's a necessary conversation. All right. As a reframe, because if you don't have those and you're not in a toxic, abusive or, terrible situation. All right. Nobody wants to be in that. But either when you're in a marriage or a best friendship or a family, sometimes you be like, hey, you know what? We need to have this talk, blah, 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 beep, 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 beep. Right. And after that, there's a famous lean on me scene. It's like, all right, I'm the head person in charge around here. Now let's go get something to eat. Right. And sometimes those conversations are necessary, and then you have some thriving afterwards because you have a better understanding of each other after that. Right. And so, yes, there was there's many conversations I've had with my parents to where, yes, there's some very positive ones in there. And there's some of them where, hey, man, you need to get your stuff together around here. What we're doing, and then beep, 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 beep. And then let's go get something to eat.
It's fascinating to me because it's not predictive. It's not pushing you towards it, but it's saying like, this is the directional orientation this needs to go in for this to continue.
Mhm.
But that you got to put that environment on the table. And I feel like professional work today too, that's a big part of it is just putting the structure around the thing that now the person has to go and do themselves.
Right. It is collaborative. It is collaborative. So when we talk about these words all the time, financial planning is collaborative. The word collaborative is in the definition to see if people are definition. And you're using financial advice in order to accomplish your life goals, understanding your values, attitudes. It's exactly. So when people say, "Oh, well, with comprehensive financial planning, the financial psychology, although it's in the CFP board, curriculum now, or even when advisors say, "Oh, we want to do a pushy stuff and mushy stuff," people just want to know what their number is and do their investment portfolio, and that's it. You know, the process is the process, right? And so when when I was going through, my process, then the words and how it matches up until now, the words vulnerability, okay, courageous, and this is to bring that Brene Brownisms, right? Now everybody is saying, how do you connect? How you better understand? What are the attitudes, experiences, values, all that? You know, people announce this now. It's like, I'm gonna be vulnerable with you right now. I'm like, what? Just be vulnerable. Don't announce it to me. Or tell I wouldn't say genius loosely, but when we're talking about these things, it's to be able to identify what financial socialization is. When you're talking about money talks in the home, or when you're talking about self-care or mindfulness or journaling or reflective questioning. Okay. Yeah. I know the terms. All right. And sometimes when I'm out there giving speeches and stuff, they're like, "Oh, well, you didn't say that." I'm like, "No, yes, I did. You just wasn't listening." Right. The genius is being able to put somebody in a place to where they can see themselves, in a story to where they, say, "Oh, that's active listening," or "That's motivational interview," or, "That's, financial socialization," right? And when you're able to tell people stories like that and they get to see themselves, then that's the magic.
It's really interesting to think about how much of it is such an intuitive process. And part of that, realizing just how intuitive it is, you need that layer to be able to put the words over it. I feel like this is something I experience all the time in conversations like this or conversations in my professional life where it's like reminding people everything I'm about to tell you is entirely intuitive. I should be saying stuff and you should be saying, "Well, duh," over and over and over again. My only job is to help just put some words on this thing so that you can step back and start to reflect.
Absolutely. So my dad's telling me all the time, he says, "Oh, is that why you got your PhD like that? And you paid all that money for that PhD? We was doing that back in '73. Crazy. Right? It's because, those are the big words. Oh, that's what that is. Oh, that's what the research told you. I did that in '68. Right. And, but, but that's what that is. That's exactly what you explained is like, oh, okay. Say it in a way to where you can go anywhere in the world and deliver a framework. Okay. Like I do a couples framework sometimes. And then, you mentioned put a situation because you're creating an environment to where people can say, "Oh, okay. Yeah, me too. I can relate to that. I've been waiting to be asked something like this. Good question. Thank you for asking." All of those kind of reactions. And it was like, yes, this is what I've been waiting to do. And they tell the story. And I had this line is there's stories in your statements and your statements inform your strategies. Okay. And when you tell a story, there's stories in your line item statements all the time. So you can see when your life and money are disconnecting. You can witness it. It's sitting right there. And I have here. There it is right here. I show the people all the time this little envelope. I print them off. I have them. So I don't ask people to do work that I haven't done and do repeatedly. All right. I'm about to go into a new phase of self-understanding. I don't even know what that is, but it's calling me inside of here. Right. So when you place some people into the environment that they trust you, like I'm doing with you, this is very natural, right? I'm pretty open. That said, it just depends on the flow of things. And then that way that's connectivity. That's vulnerability. That's courage. That's grace. That's compassion. And I love all of those words and use them repeatedly. Okay. The skill and the I guess the human conditionness of this. Yes, I just made that word up. But it is to naturally let folks get into that realm so they can share themselves.
What age is it? High school or is it college or is it before when you start to fall in love with words? And specifically, like when you start writing poetry, when you start doing stuff like that?
Oh, wow. I wrote this poem. Actually, it was a self-reflection. Hold on one second. I know your listeners love to hear me cough. No, we're getting both over cold. But I wrote this story in third and first person. And I think it was fifth grade. Matter of fact, I have it in my closet here and wrote it for my mother. I wrote the story as though I was my mother. So I was writing it through her lens and using first person and writing a story of what her day would look like and what she was feeling maybe internally. All right. I did not interview her before this writing. And I wrote it. I ended up getting an A on it, but that wasn't the point. I gave my mother the assignment after I finished, and she still has the original today. And that letter had. She goes, how did you understand it? What was the intuition of you understanding this so well? She was amazed. I don't know that amazed wasn't even a word. I don't know what the word is. She couldn't believe that, a young man, a young boy had the intuition to write such a thing. And I've since read it. It's not pumping the chest to say it was pretty good, but it fascinated me and I put my whole soul into it. And then that kicked off writing poetry, which helped me. It was just like, it is journaling. It was therapy. And it was good. It was good poetry. It wasn't like, hey, hickory dickory dock, nothing like that. Andrew Dice Clay. But but it was really, but it was very good. And I fell in love with it because it allowed me to escape and dig real deep into, my fears, my joys, all the emotional intelligence. And it allowed me to get out anger. It allowed me to accentuate happiness. A lot of things. And I just kept going.
Did you share those? Did those end up going to just some teachers on occasion, or did you share them with friends or anything like that ever?
I started my first, I guess my K-level, they call them K-level classes. It's like, you were, I guess, above the average or something like that. And my first K-level class was English and grammar. And I had teachers like Miss Warner, Miss Kipcart, Miss Cartwright. I still remember those folks, Miss Hammond. But this is the thing. When you have folks that enter your life, that's why the acknowledgement section of the book is so long. It's like, you never forget them. Mike Tyson said one time, he said, there's a difference between being poor and being, going through poverty. There's a difference. He said, you never forget, abject poverty. And what does that have to do with here? It's like, if someone's going to be real about themselves, they don't forget who made significant impacts in your life. And you asked me about the writing. Those, along with my mother, number one, those teachers saw a gift in me, and they challenged me to where when I didn't apply myself, they were like, you need to go back and rewrite this. You can do better. And I still have papers that I wrote back there that they sent back. I made a C or something like that. And they were like, go back and write it again. And so I love prose. I still love documentaries to this day. I love history, world history, all type of history. And And I like words. I like being connected with, you know, the, just, just the discovery of human spirit. When I write, when I write poetry, and I want to get back into it, actually, there's some things I've been just chewing down because I just either don't think I had the time or whatever, but time is running out. We're in the midpoint of life right now, literally. Right? I call it the Benjamin Button moment when they were in that mirror. They was like, you're 48 and I think we're like 43. We're meeting in the middle, right? And this is the middle. So I do want to write more because when I write, Matt, I have to take a nap because it's an outer body of experience because I'm in it when I write. So when I come out and finish, I feel exhausted because I was connected with that feeling so tough.
So what happens with both of us? We'll have some attitude. What happens with college? What happens with how do you make the transition from at least your first run of academic Preston to real world Preston?
Yeah, there was always a real world Preston because I worked. So when I'm sharing with my students, because I wear many hats. I got this LL Cool J head, right? And so it's fitting because I can wear a lot of hats. So the professor, the wealth advisor, the author, the speaker, blah,
The
blah, blah.
Kangles,
Everything,
the bucket
right?
hats. We'll get all the LL hats.
All of that, right? And so my professor had at me when folks, and I have to have compassion. So I'm not this. Yeah, I'm forward with folks, but I'm also a big teddy bear. I'm a big teddy bear, but I'm also, I come from a background of directness and not mean spirited directness. It's, what are you going to do? All right. Or there's explanations and there's excuses. All right. And some people get confused about what an explanation is and an excuse is. And people are like, well, why don't you take ownership of that? I said, no, I ain't taking ownership or shit, because this is an explanation. It's not an excuse. I know the difference. Now, if it's an excuse, I went through it to where somebody told me, hey, man, that ain't it. That you got to do, that's an excuse. You got to do something else, right? And so when I hear, some of my young folks talk about maybe a little bit of toughness in life, you have to have a little bit of grit. I know that people are loving the word resilience now, right? Right. Look, I worked, and this is not survivor's bias either to where, well, I did it too, then you could do it, right? It's not one of those. It's like, hey, I had an apartment. I commuted to school. All right. I worked 20 to 30 hours a week while going to school, while partying too, right? All right. Responsible for all my bills, all of that. So when they say, well, Dr. Cherry, you probably had a little bit more access than we did. You probably had another. Let me tell you. It's since you asked, right? Since you asked, let me tell you, right? And so, when I think about those transition years, I've always had. There was never not a real aspect of life, because I'm gonna tell you where that started. When my mom and dad made us my sister and I buy our own toiletries at 15. Well, I think it was 14, something like that, 14 to 15. Matter of fact, I didn't know it was when we first started working. So it was probably 16, because I think that was a legal age at the time. I think I worked at a pharmacy, my first job or something like that. And they were like, oh, well, since you got a check, now we can buy everything that you ever need. All right. But then that wouldn't teach you any responsibility. So go get this toothpaste, and you and your sister are gonna do all the bathroom stuff, and you have to buy it or you're gonna get your ass beat, because you ain't coming out funky with no bad breath or nothing like that. You ain't coming out ashy. So you had to go get you some stuff, right? So there was always a sense of realism along with academia. So I've been working a long time, responsibility, having a goal, having a purpose. When folks say, oh, well, that person's academic, they couldn't work in the real world. I'm like, well, first of all, everything starts with academia, research, the numbers and all this other stuff. That's a whole nother thing. And then number two, there's a lot of folks that have dual careers that, came out of the private sector to go into academia. And I do understand sometimes there's some people live in the academic world and haven't had any real world experience. But for me, it was always a partner, Right? And so to answer your question too, to go a little bit further, is when I went to grad school in 2006, I was working at a bank. Now, matter of fact, academia was a fallback because they were going through cuts at the time. they were going through cuts at the time. I'm like, you know what? I have a sense something's coming up here. So when they did these massive layoffs at that time, I had a letter in my hand. I was like, peace, I'm going to grad school. And I did. And then when I came out, I went straight to work. And that's really when cause I got my Series 7 in 2006, I think it was. And then when I finished, no, 2005, went to grad school 2006. And then when I came up, that's when I really started my financial planning career.
There's a through line inside of this, of these layerings of where you start to do one thing while you're doing something else. It's kind of the whole like slash career and Marcy Alberher's work, some of the other people who talk about this, of where you're never just one thing at once. You're always like 18 different things. And the way you get to practice that is really interesting.
Yeah, I've had multiple lives in, my life right now. To the point to where I am now, Matt, is, man, I could go on with this, but it's when I say gratitude, all right, and that's another popular word nowadays where folks don't know what the heck that means, right? True gratitude. And that's another thing too. I guess that's a pun too, because now people are putting it true before words now. True wealth or true gratitude. It was like, what are we doing? The word is enough. It's gratitude. That's why I talk about wealth and well-being. And people are like, oh, well, to have wealth is to have more time and have more health. I said, no. All right. You're putting two words together. It's wealth, dollars, well-being, domains. There's a difference. And you need wealth to fund well-being. That's being real about stuff. Right. And so, true gratitude. No, but, you talk about more lives that I've lived. I didn't even get to write about it. I don't know. One of these days I'll just write about it all. But I am grateful to be living. I am in gratitude to the folks that invested in me. I'm in gratitude of faith as I define it. I'm in gratitude of my wife and child, my parents, the people that I mentor, the people I serve. It's fascinating. Time is now starting. I feel more mortal every day now, even though I'm young, in the scheme of things. But actually, people need to get real with themselves. All right. You only get 15 good years on this planet. All right. And that's like 40 to 55. All else equal. All right. You should have decent enough income, know yourself fairly well, good faith as you define it. Everything is going, you got your health pretty much, obviously you can't, play tennis like you used to. I still play tennis and there's some shots I'm not getting anymore. Right. But all else equal, those 15 years are the peak of life. All right. I don't care who you are. We have world famous athletes that cannot play a sport anymore because Father Time is undefeated. So you only get these 15 years. Right. And so when you talk about gratitude, I'm in the peak, and there's not much time. I always say that for folks that, human beings, as we live on this planet, we're visitors. We're visitors on this planet. All right. We're only here for a short time. We can make it long, but it's still short in the grand scheme of things. So all I pray for now, Matt, is time and health. And if I have those two things, shit, I can, matter of fact, I got hold on. I got enough.
That beats the stupid, what was it? The Staples easy button. I didn't do that. The shit, but that is a thing of beauty. Take me to like 2006. Is it because you're working in the bank? How do you end up getting this? How do you end up in the quote unquote advisor business? How does this get on your radar? Your parents, were they working with an advisor? Honestly,
No.
Like, was
No.
anybody in your life around this thing? Or how did you learn that this was even a pathway in life?
God, have you been listening to other stuff? No, this is fantastic because I actually introduced this question a lot, which is when I was in undergrad at Prairie View, this is what I'm talking about again. All right. Nobody is self-made. I'm talking all know. These say nobody is self-made, because I became a weightlifter,
It's pretty good. That was pretty good. Yeah, it was kind of fun.
right. Just want to be governor. But, I had a mentor. That's why I take mentorship so seriously. All right. Because somebody believed in me. I believed in myself, but before I can believe in myself, I had parents to believe in me. I got God to believe in me. I had people to believe in me. And Dr. Jan Jasper, I always talk that, and that's another thing people need to do. Mention people by name that did something for you. All right.
The
They
good
will do
ones,
it.
not just the bad ones.
Yeah,
Call out those good people by names who did those
by
good
name.
things and let people know that they exist.
They exist, right? Because and they don't even require that sometimes. But it's I don't do should sometimes, but there is a list of shoulds. You should say something by name. But yeah, Dr. Jasper, I took his personal finance class, and he was like, you're pretty good at this. I think you would be good at personal finance. And he had relationships with Texas Tech, and Dr. Jan Jasper, Dr. Vicki Hampton, Dr. Bill Gustafson. You know, they had conversation. We visited the campus of Texas Tech, who was the your grandfather, grandmother of personal finance or financial planning, as far as academia is concerned. And we visited that university. All right. So just by being in a personal finance class and having a mentor that got to what we call pull your coat, all right, right, then I got introduced to something that I had already been introduced to, and I'll say these folks by my name again, which is my parents, all right, because we had money talks in the home. We had, matching programs with allowances. And that was when we were getting allowances outside of allow you to live in a home, allow you to go to bed, allow you to live, right? Yeah, people think that, allowances are just given to you. Like, no. First, you had to go through that list first. I allow you to have this AC, that type of thing. But we had conversations about what to do. You remember I told you about the bathroom stuff, right? So we were good rolling the that. That came from my mother. And introduced our habit will be able to be flexible in times of life stages and times, right? That comes fast forward all the way forward to wealth advising. That's life planning, being able to roll and adapt, So we talked about that stuff. So now when I was in the personal finance class, it came natural to me. So I didn't know when somebody asked me, what do I want to be in life? Hell, I want to be Cat Stevens and going to live with the sheep and write for the rest of my life. That would have been great. Or been a lawyer, because I love debate class, right? But I didn't know what I didn't know until right then. So I didn't say I wanted to be a wealth advisor or a financial therapist. But I don't when people say, for those that believe, say guy works in mysterious ways. Nope, he works in his ways, actually. So it's not mysterious. So it just happened to line up this way. And then fast forward all the way to, meeting those folks at Texas Tech and coming from Prairie View. Now all the human stuff that I do, all right, the aligning that financial harmony, aligning wealth and well-being, okay, your life and money, open up the heart, open up the mind, stories and statements, life and money alignment, give your money assignment, all that. I'm using all of it, Matt. I'm using all of it. And now, I could publish a paper about it or something, or what? Or have a firm, or talk to you, talk with people, not at, right? I'm blessed. I'm fortunate to be able to mash all this up and actually do some service, make a little money. There's nothing wrong with that. But also, but make an impact on people's lives.
I want to talk a little bit about, and you've talked about this elsewhere, it's in the book too. You call them the fog years. You talk about how you came out of it. And I think this is one thing I've learned doing these conversations over the last year or so, is just how many people have a version of this. And we don't talk about it enough. I really don't think we talk about it enough. And it's often in the mid-20s, the mid-30s range of people's lives. And it's a fog. And it manifests in different ways for all sorts of different types of people. But it's a challenge. And I'm guessing this is you're started working, you're starting to do stuff, you're starting to have some money, you're starting to think, I have the points on the board that indicate success, but I am not yet ready to be myself.
Wow. You put it so perfectly. It was an investigation. It was an investigation. It was a time to where I was ahead of myself. You're talking about these albums, these records, okay? I'm always going to tie something back into something, right? And
You're in the right place.
and we're talking about the records, right? And the music and the song. I was always an old soul, Matt. They say I was 10 going on 20, 20 going on 30, 30 going on 40. Well, you know, I was always been pushing for just to push myself, see how far I can go, and also try to understand myself too. Well, when I was 28, I was 38. I had lived a lot of life pretty much until then. We discussed a little bit of it, but oh my goodness, if I could tell you some other stuff, right? Being the rejection, I still deal with that. I'm talking about that on my own podcast, but that's a thing. I had to discover that. You know, um, one of my teachers telling me that I wrote too well, and I knew myself too well. And why is this person? That was called arrogance. When it was actually assurance, because that's what I got from my home, right? Now it's on a long line of rejection socially and even professionally, being pushed away from jobs, when I earned it, and I'm going to go on. And so when the fog years started, it was that investigation itself. It's like, shit, I'm out of energy. And I was making money at the time. I got one of the best career offerings. And matter of fact, the offering was it was so good that you're talking about what I didn't know and I didn't know. This was a for real compensation package. All right. To where it was an envelope, you have the little brads. All right. It was enough to staple. You go in there, you got bonuses, you got moving stuff. I was like, man, this ain't real. And I had one of my mentors real. I said, man, this can't be real. The stuff they got in this thing, they can't be that. Where's the clock? Clock in, clock out. Where is that at? Where is the hourly wage or some shit like that? And I ended up losing that job. I mean, because it started, that was the only professional failure I've ever had. And even personal, but it kicked off an exhaustion, and also this investigation to find oneself. Because I finally, I don't know if that was an opportunity, but looking back on it now, I'm sure it was a costly one, but had I not, as my mother say, there's reasons for seasons, and I stole her line, and I use it a lot. There's reasons for seasons. Well, shit, that was a season. And thank goodness I made it out. But now when I came out though, now you're talking about transformation, another word that I love using, right? Being triumphant. And not everything has to come with trial, because I had a lot of triumph. That's where those T's come from, by the way. Money in life doesn't always have to be about trial. It can be triumphant. It's like, okay, well, I want to be able to use this abundance, and what do I do next? All right. Doesn't always have to be another sad love song. Tony Braxton, by the way. Another sad love song. Right. Anyway, but it doesn't always have to be that way. All right. But in this, when you talk about the T's, trial, triumph, transformation, the other one's escaping right now, but when you get there, that's 7 years, probably the best years, of why I'm here. But I tell you what, like you said, a lot of folks don't like talking about that. That's why, when I post every now and again, I talk about real life, REEL, and real life, REAL. Let's stop. I'm all for, look, I'm fortunate. I'm gonna have me a nice car. I'm not driving no bucket. I'm going to go see my grandmother here, my grandmother and late great grandmother, being my wife. We're taking a road trip. I'm not driving a bucket. I'm not going to be that frugal dude, driving a Pacer down the highway. Right. So I'm all about abundance. All right. And on all domains of life, the life money balance wheel we got in the book, but all domains of life. But let's be real about, like life is not linear. Money is not linear. The emotional intelligence that we have to go through is not linear. Things take time. Like the average millionaire number. All right. They're in their late 50s. This stuff doesn't happen overnight. And neither does neither does understanding of self. All right. And that's why that 15 years that I talk about, all right, that's what makes them so great. They're phenomenal years. You're always going to keep learning and keep growing, hopefully going into the next stage of life. But to be in this moment with my wife, my child, um, you know, faith, friends, and opportunity, this is it. Michael Jackson.
That man in the mirror, looking right back.
Yeah.
Bounce me all the way forward for now for a second. Stuff's working out, not worked out, working out, in the process of working out. The firm, and presumably like the firm you want, you've built a professional family around you. I would say by all measures, maybe speak to that for a second. You started this firm, you founded this firm. You would have appeared outwardly to have taken great care in picking who you're surrounded by at this firm. Nobody does that. Nobody does that by accident.
No, these are, as far as we have 4 wealth advisors outside of myself. My wife, she's phenomenal. Oh my goodness, that's a whole nother thing. Let me start with that real quick before I get into affiliating with the firm, right? Which is my wife. Okay, I went back when I was at Texas Tech in 2006. I was trying to find that somebody. Matter of fact, I broke up with my ex-girlfriend. I was trying to find somebody and it didn't work out and all this other stuff, right? And then, fast forward many years, I never found the right one. And I swore after I got myself together and all this other stuff. So this was the transformation period, to where, man, 2016 is where everything you're seeing right now, that's what everything started off, right? Now, when I went back to Lubbock, I said, I'm not going to find a woman. So I'll get to that. I'm not going to let that interrupt my emotions or anything like that. If I'm just not going to find it in Lubbock. And wow, that's where I met my wife. In 2016, we took a class together, and then 2017, right? And I'm telling you, she came to me in like a Spike Lee movie, Matt. So Spike has.
Be careful about this. Explain the century. Yeah.
Oh, you know how Spike has the floating dolly scene,
right?
All right. Now I was grading some papers. And in this room, it's called El Centro. They had this ugly ass art hanging from Zay. And I was at this big table, had these papers around me, and nobody was in this room. And I was grading papers at night about 6:30. I guess she was finishing up with class or something, because she was the only one that came through there. Now, when she came through on my peripheral vision, Matt, it seemed like she was just floating. She just floated in like the dolly scene. She just came in like this. I was like, where did you come out? And we had one of the greatest conversations I've ever had with a person. We connected it immediately. And, I have to shout out to her because our relationship, obviously, was giving us a child, is one of the things that saved my life, really. And so I had to just tell that story about her. So shout out to my wife, Iman. Now, I was connecting that with something, because what was the question?
Well, and this is related. So you just put this here before I got the chance to ask you about it, I think, which is, and this 2016 moment, actually, maybe this makes even more sense that she came on first. I feel like I've watched you very deliberately put these people into position around you.
Oh, yes.
You very selectively are curating that
for sure
group of people.
Yes, I remember now. And, I just saw a longtime friend about about a week and a half ago. And I've known this person for 20 years. This person has called me on my birthday, a friend of mine, dude. And he called me on my birthday for 20 years. And sometimes that's been our only call. And those are the type of friends that you need. And we just talked about the other day how we're in our mid-40s and we need to go take this hiking trip that we've been wanting to take, right? Yeah. And so there's friends around me. Obviously I know a lot. There's acquaintances, and I know a lot of people around the world, but I know a lot of people. There's a circle around me and there's some people that I put around me that no longer are in my life. I had a best friend and I grew up with since age 12, and we'll never talk to each other again. Not that because he passed away. It's just relationships fade away sometimes. All right. But to your point, relationships, have helped curate my life, and this is why when somebody picks up the phone and, asks or suggests something for me, I have a problem saying no sometimes. Um, I'm there for folks that reach out, and I'm not talking about just in trial life points of life either. I'm talking about, hey, somebody needs a favor. Okay, sign me up. Because not because I want that. I do want that reciprocity. Yeah, sure. All right. But at the same time, I know somebody has done that for me in some sort of way. Friend, family, goes back to that being self-made. All right. I do place people around me because we're of like mind. We're of like spirit. We're of like humanness to where, hey, I need to call you and I got a guy friend of mine. We've known each other for almost 20 years now. All right. The first one I told you about was maybe 30, but now it's going on 20 for this other friend. And we can call each other and we're fellas. Right. So we may need to talk a little emotionally to where, we make, stereotypically guys don't put their emotions out there like that. Right. So we trust each other to be, hey, let's chop it up for a second. Can you listen to a brother for a second? Right. Yes. Relationships and how you nurture and treat them. Okay. Are very important to how you are. It's social capital, by the way. That's the academic term. People are like, oh, you didn't mention social capital. Yeah, I did. Right. I can even show you the Becker formula if you like me to do so. Right. I had an audience try to challenge me one time. I said, you want me to pull a PhD out or not? But right. But yes, yes, intentionally, that's with intent, right? Intentionally and mindfully nurturing the relationships externally and internally. They're coming toward you and you're giving to help you thrive in life. Very important.
Do you think about what that means, how that projects forward for, your child now, your family, this unit? Because you're at that point where, how old, what are we? We're still under a year. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Some people have seen me in pictures and they say, you seem, you're happy,
Yeah.
Happy in air quotes because it means different things, to different folks, but money buys happiness, by the way. I say that quite emphatically.
Yep.
All right. And I use this example too. And I'll go back to, what this means to my child here in a minute, but I want to touch on money buys happiness for a second. Those fog years that I was talking about, when I was seeking help professionally, all right, that money bought me access in order to feel better, feel more well holistically. I got to get, some treatment, well, what if I didn't have that money? Sure, I got to lean on family, or, you can go to your faith house if you need it. Sometimes that doesn't work out because there's some toxicity in some of those houses sometimes. That's a whole nother podcast. But yes, I was able to buy wellness. So get out of here when you're talking about, oh, well, money is just a tool and all this. I say, no, money is a partner to what you're doing. It's a center of your existence. I know it's essential, not center, but it's essential to your existence. There's a difference. And that's why the just pisses me off sometimes because it discounts the real money. So yeah, money does buy happiness, Now coming back to, what was it again? To remind me, because my short-term memory sucks.
No, that's okay. It was about just how you're thinking about this now, raising a child.
So that goes into far money too, but for my son, I was 38 when I first traveled out of the country. He's 4 weeks. We actually had to go to Chicago to get him a passport because we couldn't order the summer John. We had to go to the passport place to get him because he was so brand new, right? So what has been instilled in me too, wealth, well-being, what we've been talking about for all these minutes, has been transferred into me and my wife, because my wife's parents have been married 40 some odd years, 46 years as well. So we were blessed for that too, because we're equally yoked for as families. Okay. Relationships, who you marry, that's a whole nother way. But yes, all those experiences in us are values, right? And opportunities and emotional intelligence, all of that, mentorship, everything And now being fortunate enough to have a little money, wealth, well-being. We are in an opportune, my wife and I, we're in an opportune time, and just talking about myself and what I'm going through. Somebody says, Preston, you look happy. And Preston, you know, you're natural for this because the way you invest in others. All right. That's why, Matt, is because now I do have the opportunity. My wife and I have the opportunity to be able to pass some of this stuff along. Shh, right. You know, this is it's a gift. It's a gift. And as we're recording this, I've been away from my wife and child for 4 days now. And I've traveled for work before, but this week is a lot of fantastic things are happening this week. I'm getting good news left and right. And there's a difference between praying in your seat and praying on your knees. Cause my mom always says, hey, have you gotten some on your knees praying? You know, there's a difference. And so I'm thanking God for a lot of things that's happening right now. But, oh man, I can't wait to get to them. And I'm about to go travel to them. My travel start tomorrow, but you're talking about the opportunity to transfer all of this into, my marriage, our child. It's a gift. It is truly a gift. And I'm feeling it right now, as he's 7 months and she's overseas as well. It's not that I don't feel empty, but I want to be next to them, right? Because I'm still going to work. Now she don't like that because I'm working 24/7. But she's like, we're there, and he gets to see me, right? So I know that was long winded there, but I'm at the pinnacle of being able to transfer things to others right now, and I'm so grateful for it.
I got some notes. I want to go back through some notes. I want you to freely interrupt me as I go through these. And I want you to hold that pinnacle thing because it's the first note I've written on this page. And asking your dad all those years for that record collection. How old was he, ballpark, when he gave you the record? And the trunk opened.
When the trunk opens, he's 21, 31. So it's 25. So that'd be 21 plus probably 46, 47, somewhere around there.
How old are you now? I can do math.
You got me on that one. Yeah. Isn't that something?
This is your record collection. You had to build your record collection. It's in this book. This is it's a really cool thing. I loved you talking about being the original Neptunes. I mean, you were doing ultimate beats and breaks without selling it. You just didn't know it yet. That's hysterical. Keith Sweat. Yeah,
I tell people all the time. I say, listen, I love Keith Sweat, but I ain't begging. They call Keith Sweat the ultimate beggar. Now I'll beg for my lady, but when somebody, you have to ask somebody twice, I ain't chasing you down to pay you money. If I had to ask you twice, if I do that, I'm not begging for opportunity. If I have to ask you, I'm not going to ask you twice. So like I said, I love me some Keith Sweat, but I ain't begging.
There's only one situation where you're supposed to be not too proud to beg, and that's to the people that you love the most. Like that's a version of it. That's the only time you're not supposed to be too proud. Yeah. Well said. Well, that connect up.
Well said. Because listen, nothing's underneath me. Far as when it talks about human condition and family is concerned. If you got to get out there and hustle and whatever you need to do, then of course you're going to beg because you got a purpose. But purpose or begging for someone's affirmation, hell no, I'm not doing that.
You talked about generational wealth and the importance of talking about intragenerational wealth across the other forms of capital. And I think this is really important because between your human capital, your social capital, your intellectual property, and the things you make and you own and that you can teach and then pass on to others, the spiritual wisdom, all the things, that's a function of your grandfather's advice. That's a function of just keep living. Keep living. There's surpluses. You got to find the surpluses along the way, and you might have to boomerang back 3 times like you did. But in that surplusing, exercising, you're going to capture these little things. And those are intergenerational things that don't have to be, like money is consumed or gifted at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, guess what? Save for the lessons. Did you
Save
consume
for
the
the lesson.
lesson? Did you gift it?
Yeah. And then also too, it took money in order to, I make this point in the book a lot. It's like, and it is have a better relationship. It's a book of permissions.
Right.
It's a book of permissions to live abundantly, how you define it, without shame or judgment, and be able to say, yes, you have to do more until you get your more than enough. People are like, oh, well, there's enough. Okay, well, what are you going to do before that, right? And it goes back to what you were saying there, is that, the inputs, they compound over time. And the thought process of my parents to place us in the suburbs, okay, that was well-being. That was a life domain, okay? That was a decision, a choice, mindfulness, intentionality, purpose, all these keywords, okay? All that. All right. But it also took a down payment.
Substantial investment in that future that a bunch of people probably would have looked at and said, you're stupid, you're fools, you're going to sacrifice all this other stuff for what?
Right. So when somebody tells me, that, that tries to kind of shoo money to the side, no, it costs money to get out into the suburbs. It costs, money for decent clothes, to have self-confidence a little bit when you're in the, or whatever Deion say, look good, play good, pay good. Right. Yeah. Right. Or whatever it may be, school supplies. Okay. All of that. Right. When somebody says, oh, I value experiences, okay, I'll be quick with this. I passed this camper the other day. All right. It was I don't know, shit. I think Ford is on like 850s now. It used to be Ford 150. I think it's 850 now for whatever models they on. Them things, those things ain't cheap, by the way.
No.
All right. When they pull the the $80,000 truck, all right, with the nice lights, the Riggs truck from Lethal, right? The modern version of that, right? And then pulling this camper, the aluminum thing.
Yeah.
All right. The mini houses that are back there. All right. So somebody will tell you, oh yeah, and there's a reason why stuff is good. That's the reason on your check stub sometimes when you take some time off or whatever, it says PTO. All right. It's called paid time off, right? Time costs money. So while you're taking a month off into the redwoods somewhere in California or something like that, don't sit here and tell me that don't cost money either. What are we doing? This is what I'm talking about, a book of permission. Let's have some real talk, just like we're talking about the fog years and stuff and all the good years and where we are spiritually and stuff like that. Let's have real talk about how access and resources, wealth, and funds well-being, and how to access a partner. Anyway, you got me on a rant there, man. That was a good question.
That was fantastic. This is why I need people to interrupt me on these. I also want to put out great callback to the Dion thing. I wrote in the margins here, I'm pretty sure it's Shaq who had the thing about talking with his kids about money. And they're like, but of course we're going to do this, Dad. Like, we're rich. And he's like, no, we're not rich. I'm rich.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. And he actually got that back from, he got it from Bill Cosby, actually.
It was a Cosby. Yeah, so we can't say it anymore.
He can't use Bill, all that time. I wish he didn't ruin his legacy like that. But that show and what was going on in that show. So no to all the stuff that he did. Yes to some of the stuff that was in the television show. And that was Vanessa.
Is that where it came from?
Yes, he said it was an episode. Vanessa said, yeah, well, I got into a fight at school, Mom and Dad, because we're rich. And then Claire said, no,
Claire,
Claire, right? They were like, no, you should never get in a fight again. She goes, why is that? She goes, because your mother and I are rich. You have nothing.
Real life lessons, real parenting skills.
Real life lessons.
And actually connects to this one too, talking about the love of words. In 5th grade, that story you told about writing this thing and your mom with the first person, then the third person, and her finding it and saying like, you understood me so well. That's the beginning of this like intuition into words thing. That is just this through line over and over and over again as you tell these stories. Really, really fantastic.
Somebody gave me a compliment the other day, which I appreciate. I might say I was one of the best storytellers out there. And I appreciate that. I do a talk called story sharing, story listening. Or story listening plus storytelling equals story sharing. Because we get to hear a lot, and I know, I guess I'm the featured guest here today. But when you're having a conversation with folks, all right, when somebody says, oh, well, you need to be doing 90% listening and 10% of the talking. I'm like, what the hell kind of conversation is that? You know, right?
Even Barbara Walters or Oprah says more than.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah.
So obviously you're not you have to self-select when the time to put yourself into the conversation and step back. That's therapeutic stuff. So you're not saying I, blah, 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 blah. And even when I'm talking to you today, a lot of it is sharing a story in order to help others,
Mhm.
but a conversation requires the sharing, right? What somebody telling and then somebody listening, and then vice versa. And it's organic, give and play there.
It's a beautiful thing. Dave Notting said something to me. This is it's on a different podcast, one he did with me and Angie Coley. And he told this story, and he basically talked about it as anything creative is the act of co-creation. It's either you and the audience or you and the other guest or whatever it is, but it's always, always, always an act of co-creation, and you have to solve for it that way.
Yeah.
And I like 8 months ago, I can't stop thinking about that. Really good.
Shout out to Dave.
Shout out to Dave Notting. You were talking about the exhaustion, and I couldn't help but think of it like there's the fog of the exhaust. I mean, come on, it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah,
Just
no, that's a good one. Hey, we're doing this is like a pun show.
yes. Oh, well, yeah. Speaking of that, you had to go back to Lubbock. I didn't get a single Lubbock or leave it joke in, so I'm going to fit it in right here. But
you dropped that one.
Yeah, that's my doing. You can blame me for that one. I love though inside of that the there's no. I wrote down there's no. You measure the durability of the relationships by the duration of the relationships. Like you got to have this thing that's you keep coming back. This friend who calls you on the birthday, and it's a big deal to make that commitment, even if it's just once a year. To just say, because that duration, that's a streak. It matters.
And it is a streak, but it also can come to an end, too. But the streaks that right now, the relationships I do have and the friendships I do have value so much, and I try to reach out to. I'm doing better. I wasn't very consistent with on my end, and I need to start reaching out to some friends I had back in high school. We played basketball together for like 7 years in my 20s, and we had, what do you call the slumber parties? The dudes wouldn't call them that now, but yeah, you stayed over your dude's house and all that time.
Had pillow fights, all that stuff you guys did.
Fights, Tecmo Bowl and all this other stuff, right? And we're in our 40s now. We could step right back into a conversation, and there's and even the 20s, going out and just having a time of your life and all that time. Time of your life, that was a song. I think it was Dirty. Was it Dirty Dancing? I think. But anyway,
yeah. Well, you got the Dirty Dancing era, and then you got the Green Day era. So it's
Green
Day
is good stuff. Silverchair and all that. That's good stuff.
That's the Daniel Johns getting shout outs on the podcast.
Right. Yeah, but I need to do better. And I'm trying to do better too. It's like, hey, but for those that don't receive that though, you can't do it for everybody. No, there's some folks that I try reaching out to and they don't get back, or, because everybody nowadays is so. I think David Brooks had an article about this in the Atlantic one time about the nuclear family, I think it was. Yeah. And, everybody's so isolated. I remember, get-togethers. It's called get-togethers where, all the adults brought their kids. The kids played in the other room or outside, ran around like for literally 4 or 5 hours. And you didn't go where the adults went, right? So when people talk about, I got kids now and all this other stuff, what the hell does that got to do with anything, right?
Playing around it. You just playing around it. That's what they did.
It's like, say hi, drop by. It used to be drop bys. If you're in the neighborhood, you could call somebody up. It used to be a payphone. I've seen it done on a payphone back in the day. Say, hey man, I'm in the neighborhood.
Fall through.
What you doing?
Here you go.
Come on. Yeah, come on and stop by or something like that. I've tried to do better with that. I've even reached out. It's people simply don't want to do it anymore. I wish there was more of that, and I'm going to try to do better on my end too, to just make those calls and just do better with that, because there's not, time is not infinite.
Time is not. I found, and this is just a personal thing on that specific one. If I have something where somebody pops into my head, somebody I want to share something with, and it might even be somebody that I haven't talked to in a long time, but it's like, if they pop into my head, I'm like, they would love this thing. Like I'll text it to them, and it might be, hey, I don't know when we're going to catch up, but I got a number from a friend of like a college buddy who I just haven't made the time to track down all these years later. And it was
Yeah.
literally like I was standing in a line waiting to see a comedy show with my wife, like over in the lobby waiting. I'm waiting to get us drinks. And I'm just like, I'm texting him right now.
Right now.
Like something's in my head. And you know what was crazy? He had seen the same show on the other side of the country like a few weeks earlier. He's like, my wife and I just saw that show. You're going to love it.
Oh, wow. That's something. See?
It's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing. I want you to tell the people the name of the book, tell them where they can find it, tell them where they can follow you, plug the podcast. Give me the list of things real quick. What's the easy way for people to find you?
Well, the one that I just want to say, Matt, thank you. You've done like hundreds of podcasts. I've done some podcasts, been a guest. I run one. This was, hey, we'll chop it up afterwards, but I appreciate being in a good setting, to where I was sharing some of this stuff. Cause one of the big fears for me is I'm getting better at is, my dad told me a long time ago, and my mom too. They were like, son, people are waiting on you. The world is waiting on you. And sometimes I have, my guard. I'm not being. It's not a fictitious person or anything. It is a moat sometimes, just to have some of these inside. But I'm letting them all out. I'm starting to let them more and more and out more. And this is what the book is for. And thank you for this podcast. That's number one. I appreciate it. Number two, the book is called Wealth in the Key of Life, making your own songs, references to Quincy Jones and, songs in the key of life. But it is finding that harmony with your notes, because it's called Wealth in the Key of Life, finding your financial harmony, bridging wealth and well-being to help you create the life that you want or achieve your life design. You can follow me everywhere on social at Dr. Preston Cherry, Dr. Preston Cherry at all the socials. I have a podcast, Life, Money, Balance. It's fantastic. Y'all need to be jumping on there. We've had so many good stuff on there. And the Concurrent Wealth Management. Actually, here you go. We're just now changing the name from Concurrent Financial Planners to Concurrent Wealth Management. It's going to be announcements. And then my personal page, drprestoncherry.com.
Go find him on all the things, intuitions into words, truly intentional investor. And I got to say, the one, the only, the true Dr. Preston Cherry. Thank you so much for coming on today, man.
Thank you, Matt. I appreciate it.
Thanks for tuning in. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe wherever you're watching The Intentional Investor so more people can find our show. You can follow Matt directly at cultishcreative.com or at cultishcreative on Twitter. For more great content at the intersection of investing and life, check out epsilontheory.com or at epsilontheory on Twitter.